Hello and welcome to episode 84 of When the Flames Go Up, the ATFC podcast. There's a bit more of a fire in the belly this week because I'm finally going back to the recreation ground to watch Aldershot Town in live action. It's been ages. 22nd of November we played Woking at home. Obviously I only go to the big games. Only the big games for me. Won't catch me at Orchard at home, mate. No, don't need to do any of that. So that was 7 defeats in a row at that time, and I'm finally making my way back on Saturday for Halifax at home. So I'm very excited, and yeah, it's gonna be weird seeing basically the same team in the same season, but a completely different vibe. New manager, new. No, it's not a new manager. It's silly. That was done before that. Well, anyway, this episode is with myself and Guy. We discuss the latest win, which was Hartlepool away, and how remarkable it is. There's a few nice stats coming up before looking ahead to Halifax and Southend, our most recent next two games, both at home. We won't be doing a pod next week because it's a Wednesday kickoff, and there's just not enough time to get one out that week before the Saturday. So we'll go after the Yeovil game the week after, which give us plenty to talk about. So yeah, the Shots have won 5 out of their last 7 in the league and absolutely turned it around since exactly the last time that I went. So a great turnaround for John Coleman. And that's why there's a bit more positivity in the air on the pod. It's myself and Guy. And that's about it. Enjoy the episode. Get in touch at ATFC podcast you can't do ats before ats. ATFC podcast at gmail.com. Although interestingly it would be at FC podcast at gmail.com. You know, just so you know. Anyway, as always, up the Shots. So the Shots come away from Hartlepool. We left it last week with on a broadly positive note. I'm not sure how much we thought we could get 3 points from Hartlepool, but we've come back with a 3-0 away win, clean sheet, 3 goals for the Shots to lift them one more place up. I believe we're still 1 point off the relegation zone in 19th position. I was looking at the last time that we've won at Victoria Park, which was back in 2017. That Gary Waddock team, Jim Kellerman and Bernard Mensah on the score sheet that day. And then I thought, well, I'll have a look the last time we've won by 3 goals at Victoria Park. And that was 1963 in a 4-1 away win. So then I was like, well, what's the last time that we won 3-0? And that was 1958. So that's 68 years ago. We won 3-0 away there. And it's also listed on the EFL website that is still the joint second fastest recorded goal in league football. It was 6 seconds into that game. Albert Mundy scored to make it 1-0. Somehow the fastest is Jim Fryatt for Bradford PA against Tranmere, who scored in 4 seconds. I mean, I can believe 6, but 4 is ludicrous. How do you even get the ball towards the goal? So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that at the top. So yeah, a remarkable win away for the Shots. Plenty of mentions from John Coleman in the post-match about players that could have got man of the match, and I suppose that's a good place for us to start. I suppose, Guy. Who you watched the game? You caught up on DAZN and managed to navigate your way through the 13 minutes of added time in the first half. Who was your man of the match or players that you'd like to pull out on reflection?
Yeah, well, before we get started, can I just say to you that maybe the reason it was 6 seconds rather than 4 seconds was because it was 1958. It was a heavy leather ball and, clunking great boots. So if he had had modern technology, he might have actually scored quicker. So, there you go. But yeah, that was I was struck by watching the game, on the zone. So I was lucky enough to not have to see the full 15 minutes extra. So I kept zapping through it. So I ended up with a 45-minute first half. But you asked me who stood out for me, and what was striking to me again is how consistent the squad has been and the lineup has been over the last few games, including over the Christmas and New Year break. So we're now playing a 4-3-3, and I guess number of players stood out for me really. I mean, just like John Coleman said. So, you know, at the back we had Widrington and Nightingale playing in the centre. Widrington was, stood out for me in a number of ways because he was stepping up to take many of the free kicks, the corners. If you look at the goals themselves, I think he was involved in at least two of them, either pumping the ball in from a free kick or I think it was the second goal, the crossfield ball that found Gandor, who then sort of you said it blocked. I think you thought that he blocked it, but the shot was blocked. I don't know. It might have been a pass to Patton, but then of course there is, of course, we had a discussion on what's happened to whether the third goal, which was Kwame Thomas's, whether that was a Gandor pass, attempt or a pass, and the jury's out on that one as well. But yeah, I mean, Gandor again did a lot of work up top, and it's interesting because we had a bit of a conversation on WhatsApp as well as what do we feel about Gandor, and I noticed on ShotsWeb as well. There's been some discussion about that as well as what the status is. And I'm torn because on the one hand, I think he does really work really hard. I mean, and one of the great things that he does is we lose the ball in there, at the top of in the opposition box, and he's already pressing, which helps the players get back behind him. He just doesn't seem to get on the score sheet much. I get the feeling that he sort of turns away rather than to the goal. The number of goals that he's got is 5 for the season. Given that he's sort of started 22 times, it seems a little bit low for a winger. But he is physical, and Coleman rates him. I mean, he made a mention of him in the interview. So I think, he did stand out for me and made very much more in terms of work rates. But then I'd also say that about some of the other players who were there. Cameron Hargreaves was a terrier in midfield. He was just all over the place. He was doing pretty much what I've been saying about him last season as well. He was the engine. And I would say the same thing about Ollie Scott as well, because he was really getting up and down. He was involved as well in one of the goals as well. The final goal, sort of passing the ball forward and then running forwards to look for the return, which is the one that Gandor attempted his shot. And given that this is only his second game back, I thought really worked really well there. And it was also notable to me as well that up top we had gone for a slightly different setup because in last few games we've had Barrett and Henry playing, and instead we went for a Patton Warren Gandor forward line, and it worked well. I mean, like what I said about Gandor not getting goals, what was encouraging to me was that both Patton and on his debut and Warren were amongst the goals, so that is really encouraging. And given the fact that we've got both of them on loan until the end of the season, hopefully they won't be recalled. But if they are going to stay until the end of the season, that's very reassuring because we did need, to do something up top as well as at the back, which has been my big bugbear. I also noticed as well, Kwame Thomas, it was great to see him back because I've been wondering what's been happening to him. He's not been injured, but he just hasn't been sort of appearing in much of the teams in recent weeks. He's that he's done a job for us in the past of bringing him on in the last 10-15 minutes or so and just holding the ball up, so it was good for him to get minutes. And I do wonder whether he does exist in Coleman's plans long term. So a goal will have done him good, but does he fit in the team? That's something I think we need to talk a little bit about as well. But overall, very positive performance, and it was quite striking to hear the Coleman talking about the work rate, that we were in form, that really that Solihull game maybe was a bit of a blip, at our end. And that's the last thing I'll say is that the commentary that was happening, which was obviously coming from the Hartlepool side, it was quite notable that they were saying as well that they felt that their team was a bit under par in this particular game. So it just seemed to work well that we seemed to be hitting form just as they were dropping off. So, it's great that we did well, but let's factor in the fact that we were playing a team that was a little bit below par.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the match commentators, yeah, as you mentioned there, they also did kind of they were quite impressed in the first half. I think before the stoppages and stuff that Hartlepool weren't able to create anything. Alex Reid could barely. I didn't actually know he was on the pitch until the second half, so they didn't mention him. But I think they do mention him. Yeah, the second half is quite funny. There, I think that's the co-commentator. He says they just can't get the ball to Alex Reid, and then the next thing is Alex Reid's through on goal. I was like, that's so good. Yeah, so that was good to see. And also, while I'm on the match commentators, they did a lovely during the like 12-minute, 13-minute. Or what was it? I think it was 14 in the end because we scored in plus 13. They had a little aside where Michael Barron, the co-coms, was talking about a car park in Venice, basically, and how it was absolutely beautiful. You should have seen the floor. It was doing all this kind of thing. So you could really tell how the second half was dwindling away from a Hartlepool point of view. And then little did we know, a few minutes later, Sean Patton on debut on loan from Reading, as you mentioned, pops up with his goal. Yeah, Hadi Gandor kind of tries to curl it into the far post. I think it's a bit of a weird move that I've not really seen in a game before because the defender is somehow covering behind the goalkeeper, which it looks good. It looks as if he's intercepted or he's seen the danger, but I'm not sure why he wouldn't trust your keeper to save that. I don't know. I can't really from the angle that we've got. It's quite hard to tell. So yeah, that was good fun. I enjoyed listening to that and catching up on the highlights. Yeah, you mentioned some of the players that John Coleman pulled out in his post-match interview is very complimentary of Theo. He was kind of mentioning that he can orchestrate play from there. I mean, which is something that we've said on countless episodes, I think, since we've started doing this thing. And hopefully John Coleman is able to get him doing exactly that role more than the kind of role that we've been seeing him under Tommy, which I mean I think he was maybe forced into putting Theo into that position in different opponents and stuff, but I think Gon is starting to get the best out of him, and he called Cam or he likened him to a wasp, which I think is the perfect description of Cam Hargreaves. He absolutely is a wasp. He's annoying for the opposition when he's on song. You don't get the second touch that you need in the middle. So long may his return to form, because I feel like he had a bit of a drop around. Well, to be honest, it coincided with our horrible run anyway, where we lost 8 in a row. So yeah, great to see him back influencing play. And yeah, Ollie Scott was kind of a part of the added time because he part of a head injury there, so he ended with a bandage. I saw him shushing Hartlepool fans. I love it. Great to see him back. I thought he was superb before he got injured, and I think it went understated at the time how he slipped in after Harfield got injured. He kind of just slipped into the exact same position that Harfield was on, the left centre back, with a left foot. And everyone thought, well, he's just kind of covering the Harfield job. I think now he can carve his own role in this team. So yeah, long may that run continue, and hopefully he stays fit. I mean, it is pretty remarkable that he's able to finish two games in a week. So, and with a very busy February coming up, we're going to need all the legs we can get. Obviously, got to mention the 102 travelling fans, and great to have 2 goals in front of that end as well. Nothing better as an away fan, especially in an away end where you've got loads of room, to see a goal go in front of you. You can move as much as you like. You can jump down a few steps. You can give it some fist pumps to the players. So hopefully that trip was absolutely worth it. And I'm sure people that have been up there countless times and not seen us get anything from up there and just watch Manny Diasaruvi score another headed goal against us. Hopefully that's revenge for all those times. And of course, it was still January. So I mean, it's January, Hartlepool away. Um, yeah, and John Coleman also mentioned that in his post match. He was very complimentary of the support that he's getting at these away games and how we've all been through the mill. So I I could see nothing but positives, Guy, heading into the next week. How are you feeling generally after the result and I guess the context of the results around us?
I mean, I'm usually whenever we do predictions, I'm generally the more cautious, pessimistic one, right? I mean, before we left for Christmas and New Year, I was saying I couldn't see where we are going to get any of these points, and lo and behold, I was proved wrong. And then, I think in my voice notes last week, I was saying maybe we might get a draw against Hartlepool, and lo and behold, we've gone and scored three. So, and a clean sheet, which let's not overlook this because given the last couple of seasons, yes, we've been high scorers, but we've also been really leaky at the back. So it was so nice to see us not concede a goal. And and that's the other thing I want to say is that I noticed that, when we were 2-0 up with about 15 to 20 minutes to go, under Tommy Widrington's management, as wonderful and chaotic as it was, you always had the nagging doubt that somehow we might contrive to either draw or lose it. Right? So, and I didn't feel that for the first time. I didn't feel that we were going to end up drawing or losing this game at 2-0 up. So I was quite. So that's quite a nice feeling to have. I feel that something. That's the other thing about the squad. It seems a lot more mature, a little bit more experienced, a bit more game. Much more knowledgeable about the game, or savvy, I think, or cunning is probably the better words to use here. They know how to play the game out now, and that really hopefully should stand us in good stead. Because as you said at the start of the program, yes, we're only 19th. We're still only 1 point away from the drop zone. But if you then look at 22 onwards, we're starting to open up a gap there. So really, our battle is with 20 is with position 21. And if we can just keep getting the points, then I think the fate is in our hands. Whereas I think before Christmas there was a sense that we were, especially after that terrible losing streak, we were starting to be left behind. And I think now we're it's now in our hands. And it's so reassuring to be feeling that now at the beginning of February rather than, you know, come April or May, when it's sort of late March, April, when we start thinking, oh God, when is form going to turn around? Because I feel we've got the form. We seem to have the players back. I mean, I still feel there is still a little bit of me worried that we are only maybe one or two injuries away from this settled side starting to unravel. But at the same time, I'm reassured. Looking at up top as well, we're bringing in players like Patton and Warren. We've hopefully got them on until the end of the season. I'm feeling a lot more confident at the moment, Will.
Well, yeah, that is great to hear. Yeah, I think another thing on Coleman's post match, I was going to say, but in general, it's quite straight talking, and he just kind of says it quite logically in his head, it seems. And it's very much, I mean, actually, it's kind of similar to Tommy. I don't get too high when we win, don't get too low when we lose, that kind of thing. But it's kind of that, but personified, I feel. And that is also plays into the kind of reassuring nature of this team, I think, as you were saying. I was just wrote down there that I can't remember who mentioned it. Well, I'm not sure who mentioned it a few weeks ago, or maybe during that run. But just the spine of the team that we've got now, I feel a bit more. That looks solid. And, you've got Boyce Clark, who's now embedded in. He's got clarity on his contract situation. You've got Will Nightingale, who's absolutely mammoth at the back and a leader. We know what Hargreaves and Widgerton can do in that middle, given how much we've seen them, and now we know that we can score goals. And we are consistently scoring quite a lot of goals here in this patch of form. So yeah, it's looking good. But yeah, I was just going to mention the teams around us picking up points because a win away at Hartlepool feels feels big and feels galvanizing. But we were quickly humbled by some of the results around us, which was Braintree beating Eastleigh, Eastleigh on a slide, Boston going to Boreham Wood and winning 2-1. Boreham Wood 2 red cards. Regan Booty getting a quick fire double yellow for obviously calling the ref something. I think definitely with the second one. And who else was? Well, I suppose yeah, Brackley and Sutton played out a draw, so they both gain a point. Yeah, so all it means is really it's still obviously a vitally important 3 points. It just brings Brackley now into it. I feel they're only 4 points off the relegation places, and as you mentioned, the gap behind Braintree is now it's getting towards insurmountable for Truro, Morecambe, and Gateshead, who are 7.7 points and 9 points adrift, respectively. Morecambe, interestingly, have gotten rid of their manager. Jim Bentley is back in charge, so that'll be interesting to see if and what changes in the next couple of weeks with them. We've probably got time to move on to the next couple of home games. So we've got Halifax on Saturday and then Southend on the Wednesday. The annoying Wednesday games where we can't really get a pod out in time for the weekend. So we'll have to skip a week. So Halifax up first. It's actually my first game watching Aldershot since the 22nd of November. It's like I've been on a protest since the Woking defeat. 2-1. That was 7 defeats in a row. So I've left it in a real horrible state. So Halifax are 7th at the moment, occupying that last playoff place. They've won 3 times here at the Rec out of the last 5 league games, 4 out of 6 in all competitions at the Recreation Ground, which is a remarkable record. Last season was a 4-3 defeat. Shots coming back from 2-0 down, 2-2, conceding 2 in 5 minutes before getting consolation with Jack Barham. Very classic Tommy Widrington home performance there. Halifax this season, so they've won their last 2 away league games. They've won 3 league games in a row. They were against Eastleigh, Morecambe, and Boston United. So they're on a decent run, but it's context needed for those. They've lost the last 2, but both in cup competitions against Tamworth in the National League Cup and Kidderminster most recently at the weekend in the FA Trophy. I'll run through the Southend stuff if you can bear it, and then we'll talk about them both, Guy. So Southend are literally just behind them. They are 1 point off Halifax in 8th position. They've got a much better goal difference over Halifax. However, they've only won once in their last 7 visits to the Rec. That was all the way back in 2013 in League Two. Obviously, famously, Southend came here for Boxing Day. Were 1-0 up. Dots were down to 10 men because Darren Jones took it upon himself to beat. I can't remember what his name was. Was it Dickinson? Oh, I don't know. He nearly lamped him on the pitch. Got a red card. That was abandoned because of a floodlight failure, and then we won the replayed game 2-0. So they'll there's still a bit of saltiness, I'm sure, all these years later. And their recent form is 2 wins out of the last 5 in the league, which were against Sutton and Eastleigh. So again, some context needed for those wins there. Guy, that's a lot of info to go into. I'm going to let you talk, but 2 big home games coming up for the Shots. How are you feeling going into these 2?
Well, I mean, just what I said before, I'm feeling a bit more confident than I would have otherwise been. I mean, let's just go through both of them. I mean, you mentioned that Halifax who've had quite a few wins of late, but then when you look at who they've got those wins against, they're clubs, their teams sort of around where we are as well. So, and some of them seem to be on the slide a bit. So I think actually, maybe it flatters them a little bit. So I think there is a potential. potential for us to get something there. I mean, in terms of looking at how they're going to set up on Saturday for those who are interested, they do seem to play, for the last few games, they do seem to be setting up with three or four at the back. So it's going to be, I guess there's going to be quite a bit of traffic to get through them. In their midfield, they tend to like playing with two deeper midfielders and then three more advanced, and then they have one player up top, William Harris, who seems to operate mainly as a lone striker. And it's probably no surprise that he is their number one goal scorer for the season with 12 goals. I mean, I don't think we're anywhere near none of our players are anywhere near that. Um, they also seem to their second top scorer, Josh Hamami. He has 9 goals and he also has 5 assists. But good for us in the sense that he's been injured since the start of January, so he won't be making an appearance. And then another player, one of their midfielders who we might need to keep an eye out would be Owen Bray. He's scored 5 goals as well. Both Hamami and Angelo Capello, who will be most likely playing in their midfield, I think on their right hand side, do seem to be involved in many of the assists. So he will be one that they need to close down in order to prevent him presumably getting it to William Harris up top. Another thing to note about Halifax as well, they've played with 12 of their they've got 12 players who've played 20 games or more this season. So that's quite a settled side, especially when you compare it to us. We've only had 7 players who've played 20 or more games. So it seems to me that they may move around some of the players between who's going to be sort of more advanced, or if they're going to have 3 at the back or 4 at the back, but there does seem to be a kind of a regular spine to the team. The bookies do slightly favor Aldershot, though, I guess based on our form, and I'm feeling quite confident about it. So I'm going to go 2-1. So that could potentially be the kiss of death. Southend, in terms of talking about them, yes, they've had, looking at the last few games, they've had a win, 2 draws, a loss. They've lost against Rochdale, but they've drawn against York. It seems a bit of a mixed bag as well. They beat Chatham at the weekend in the FA Trophy, so maybe that's good for them. They've been playing quite consistently a 5-3-2. So that will make it slightly hard to break down. It's going to be quite a filled out back there that Aldershot will have to somehow work their way through. Although I think watching from Hartlepool, what was interesting was that it was when we were on, not so much on the break, but when we were putting high balls in Widrington on those 2 goals, either from a free kick near the halfway line or from crossfields, that seems to work for us. So maybe we can do something similar there. In terms of key players to look out for, I mean, Andrew Dallas, who plays up top, he's got 9 goals this season. But interestingly enough, their second top scorer is Gus Scott Morrison, who plays at right back. I'm kind of curious to know how he gets those goals, whether it's just he's one of those kind of clunking defenders who gets up for the corners and sort of nods it, or whether it's free. I don't know. But interestingly enough, they've also got quite a settled squad, 14 players who've played 20 or more games this season. Interestingly enough, I was looking at what the fans were saying, especially after their loss to Rochdale, and there was quite a bit. I mean, you can understand after you've lost, there are going to be grumbles, but I guess there must be a pinch of salt, pinch of truth with this, in the sense that a number of the fans were grumbling about there being lots of possession, that they hold on to the ball really well, but it tends to be sort of more sideways rather than sort of forward and penetrating. So if we can keep them moving sideways, I think we'll be quite reassured there. Also, we should look out on the program for who is going to start, because apparently when they have Kavanagh Miley, or I think it's Oliver Coker, when they start the game, they're more likely to win the game. But when they have another 2 players in midfield, Morton and Austin, starting, they tend to lose. And interestingly enough, against both Rochdale and York, they were grumbling about how they've not been able to hold on to leads this year. They did concede quite late in the game in both the Rochdale loss as well as the York draw. So that could be potentially something for us to keep in mind. Maybe we should throw Kwame Thomas up there in the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes and get a goal, snatch a goal at the end there. So that is at this point, bookies are not really sort of making any kind of judgment on this particular game because it's so far out. But historically, it's tended to be more Southend winning than us. So I guess that's what they're going to say, but I'm also feeling pretty confident about this.
Lovely stuff. Nice insight into those two teams. Yeah, the one thing I was going to mention, well, I've mentioned basically every part of John Coleman's post match, but one last thing. Yeah, well, I was talking about him being straight talking and kind of onto the next one. He kind of mentioned that the next one is, it's a home game, and the last home game was obviously Solihull, a 5-1 defeat that was unexpected at the time. So it's nearly a month will have passed since that day that we lost there. So hopefully the Shots can, I guess, avenge that defeat. I'm not sure he can avenge against a team that isn't Solihull, but get a win at home. Be vitally important to get probably at least one win from these next two. I guess a word on February as a month. It is absolutely rammed with some rescheduled games and just general fixture congestion. So the Shots will play 7 times. I imagine most National League teams will also be playing 7 times, really, other than those lucky teams on 30 games so far. So yeah, it's Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, and then Saturday. That final one is at home to Rochdale. So some difficult games in there. Halifax, Southend. What's the other home game? Tamworth, Rochdale. Those are the 4 home games that we've got coming up. So a tricky period. Lots of weary legs, I'm sure, by the end of it. So hopefully, news of a new signing. I'm not sure. There's little rumours here or there, and usually as we record, something crops up, and they immediately sign someone, so that we can't get it into the pod. It's great. So hopefully that happens to bolster the squad going into the next 2 games. Yeah. So what was your 2-1 for Halifax? What were you saying for Southend?
I don't think I gave one, but I think I mean, like you, I think I will take 2 wins, no question, but I would accept a win and a draw. I'm happy with that as well. I think, but at this point, we do need to be picking, we need to be getting points regularly. Given and what you just said about how we're going to be pretty much playing twice a week until the end of the month, it could potentially be a bit of a concern, given how thin the squad is in terms of the number of players that are still injured and still coming back. So we're aiming to do this with the same players. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. So, on the one hand, I'm really feeling quite, happy about the current players the current squad players and those who are and the line, the formation that we've been putting out. But we're only 1 or 2 injuries away from, Coleman having to sort of rethink everything again. So
Yeah, true. Well, hopefully we don't get any more out of the
no,
weekend. Great. Well, thank you, Guy,
no, thank you.
and we'll be back in a couple of weeks, I think.